So welcome everyone for Cloud Computing and Big Data. We have our lecture 10 here, part 2, and this is about software as a service. In the first part, we looked a little bit again on the different levels of this as a service notion. So we had infrastructure as a service as a basics in lecture 8. Then on top of it, a little bit the idea of using platform as a service, which in a way leverages, of course, infrastructure as a service in some respect, providing us with this nice Lego bricks and pieces we discussed basically in the last time in lecture 9. And of course, today in lecture 10, then the idea was combining all of these platform elements really to a cutting edge, nicely usable software, which is then the idea of a software as a service or an application. So in one respect, you can even say all the apps that you know are software as a service, right? So you don't really have to deal with any lower level computing. You swipe the credit card, get Angry Birds, and you can play. And we made the case, of course, that gaming is just one, let's say, market of this software as a service idea. We have seen also the customer relationship management software, SOHO, or basically we had Fresh Sales as well. Basically all of these different CRM solutions really benefit from the SaaS significantly in the past, and in this sense also contribute, of course, to the success of the idea that we have seen with the many benefits of SaaS, really, when you think about it, how the world was before this was happening, because there were people having in stores, really literally, physically, downtown, somewhere stores about software. You can basically there where you got electronics, also got tons of software. It's today a little bit still in the online gaming and maybe here and there for tax reimbursement applications and very, very specific things. But more people have gone to the cloud and provide the software delivery model really with subscriptions, with online ideas instead of going downtown somewhere where you can get electronics or software and then buy a big package with tons of CDs or tons of DVDs you have to install first on your computer. And then at some point in time, you can really use this application. Of course, here and there, you know, gaming is a little bit differently. So you still go downtown to get this, but also there you see several times you just pay actually an online, let's say, subscription downtown, for instance, for the World of Warcraft and all of that. Hence, this market is huge. We have seen the billions in revenues alone for CRMs, and the advantages for both, for users and the data centers, have been enormously. While the users is sort of clear, I sit in front of my laptop, I swipe the credit card for something specific and can immediately access it. The benefit for the data centers have to be seen in several different ways. Of course, one of that was also that you have, again, the support of multi-tenant architecture. So as a provider perspective, you can run different software in parallel in terms of versions. You can make them accessible to different user groups. You can basically see that all the different development, let's say, when you have even early stage development, can be exposed to selected users for beta testing, alpha testing even. So there are lots of benefits for SaaS. And one of the terms I really want you to take away was this horizontal scalability of the application. So this is something which, of course, should be a little bit implemented with the idea in mind that you want to scale to many users. So let's say we had the example of CRM contacts. You have maybe in the beginning just 100 contacts, but if you are multi-enterprise or large enterprise, after 10 years of service, you have maybe 100,000 contacts in your database, and all of that should be the same look and feel, should be high performance. When you look up a contact, see all relevant information, all the interactions took place, having even Facebook profiles reviewed or Twitter/X, statements reviewed for a specific person. So here was also the warning in the first part, be careful of what you expose on social media. Chances are that this is by these tools also immediately findable by let's say highly optimized software, filtering, searching, and so on. One example I also was shooting was recruiting, which is of the interest of almost everyone as a person, right? So recruiters use that tools sometimes to get also overview over persons. Not everywhere perhaps, and not everyone, but still that is a possibility, and take care that, you know, that what you expose on the internet is also something you stand for when you do your jobs. And that's not so obvious, of course. It's a topic which, I said, also cybersecurity, especially with social networks, but also then in the clouds, will come basically as a more and more important topic. I will touch base on this again in part 2 now, even if you see that there are lots of different levels included, not only the social media part, exposing information, but also then the general note of GDPR, the right to be forgotten, and many of these aspects. So let's see that in the advanced SaaS topics now in part 2 and the applications, I cannot possibly cover everything, right? SaaS has penetrated the market in almost all different sectors. It's available in all different regions of the EU and across the US and everywhere in Asia and so on. So I think the case is made that SaaS exists and is, you know, basically shaping our lives significantly. But also, of course, here in the second part, I want to pin to specific elements here and there, where SaaS is, you know, also a bit maybe controversial, or also where it helps scientists, maybe even on a way where you say it's not maybe the easy, beautiful website, but it's still sort of a software as a service topic when I talk about the European Open Science Cloud, where basically the cloud can be also not necessarily always as a SaaS option, you know, this beautiful swipe credit card website, but also some, let's say, additional higher level service that we use in science and engineering a lot. And I will make the case for it. So let's get back to some of the elements that I didn't cover in part 1, but which are sort of very instrumental in the cloud, especially on the SaaS level, and then also understanding their you know, benefits and unique selling proposition. You see here, for instance, a very good idea of one of the key benefits of SaaS. You have directly interaction with the user. You have different business cases in the clouds. As I was saying something about, yeah, I will use a SOHO CRM. I'm happy. And I do this since, you know, several years now, and that's great. But of course, the next application is just one click away, right? And you can see nicely how that works here in the SOHO store. Here on the left side, you see, for instance, in the sales marketing part, I have the subscription to CRM. I have already some business reports I can access to. I have email and chat in my subscription, meetings, and so on and so on. But of course, think about that. There's also many different options where I can still do some other, let's say, subscription to other modules. And then, you know, I pay maybe a little bit more, but get, let's say, professional invoices and so on and so on. Different forms I can put to my users, sites, surveys, campaigns, ad campaigns, etc. So there's a sort of cross-selling idea that the immediately of the core product, you are in contact with the, let's say, user already. Chances are that by 1 click or 2 clicks, I said also, if you have the CRM, then the contact manager might be a nice option because you have all contacts anyway already in your CRM system. So let's have a sophisticated contact manager on top. So this is something where this goes together quite nicely. And this is, of course, a benefit for the customer of using from the same provider, really, the same login that you can have, the same users or customers already inside, and do automated data exchange, right? You don't buy that from provider X, provider Y, and provider Z. You're already basically on that platform and on the software, and then you can basically use different features of it. So when I was saying platform, this is not intended to be platform as a service, right? Here we talk about all software solutions, but they're nicely connected again, and, you know, basically can deal together with the same elements. You see here a little bit remote sales office. That was during COVID, for instance, quite important, right? That you move all your office parts, which are directly to sales, online. So you have collaborations with the sales team. Zoho meetings suddenly, you know, the Zoom meetings were coming along. So Zoho had their own way of dealing with face-to-face video, and Zoho Showtime to see sales presentations online and songs like this. And all of that was just, you know, enable one button. You pay a little bit of extra, of course, and that is already pre-configured. Your credit carded there, and you suddenly have access to much more functionality. So very, very nice for both again. The user that needs the solution maybe because COVID was striking, for instance, everyone, And then, of course, for the business, for SOHO, for an example, is a perfect cross-selling opportunity. Everybody's online. Let's have this module for a remote sales office. So you see how that works quite nicely. And without SaaS, this would be not really feasible, right? You go downtown again. Well, downtown, the shop is closed because of COVID. Then you would ask around, okay, who has other options from other software vendors which I need? Then I maybe have a Zoom meeting here that has similar functionality, face-to-face videos, okay. But then I need another login. Every time I organize a Zoom meeting, I put in a Zoom link instead of having this one click that you also know perhaps from MS Teams meetings when you do this in the Microsoft environment, right? With one click, you do invite to a meeting and automatically there's a, Microsoft Teams meeting already alongside. So this is something where, of course, these are nice cross-selling opportunities, which also is used significantly in the software as a service level. Then the whole topic of cloud security is, of course, amazing. So this is something where today cybersecurity masters or people that are specialized in cloud / cybersecurity at large need, of course, much more courses on that. So this is driving almost everything we know from computing. Hence, you have the infrastructure character, you have the PAAS character and SaaS characters here included, where there are threats on all of these different levels, right? When you just briefly think about the infrastructure alone, someone can hijacking this with networking, with so-called denial of service attacks that you see here. So this is something which requires network security. But then you need, of course, a whole idea of maybe connecting remotely, APIs, using REST APIs to shut down virtualized images or not. All the facets of access beyond the networking really are also a potential threat, right? So different levels of security are needed. Different security, privacy, and GDPR or copyright protection measures needs to be put in place and monitored in a way on all of these different levels. And this makes it a bit challenging, of course, but is also yet one of the advantages now, of course, that bigger hyperscalers can basically deal with this enormously. They have experts in these fields, while when you do it, let's say in your own and say, I want to create my own little cloud in the cellar, which I can do with OpenStack, as we will discuss, right? And I will buy my own hardware. That is all on the shoulder of this, let's say, startup or moderate enterprise that wants to create his own cloud solution. Hence, when we move up the stack, there are different risks really coming up in the PAAS level. Many of this has to do with management. So you have several components you're going to use. You integrate this, so to speak, in a middleware solution. And this middleware solution is now based on these components that maybe have already some different problems with compliance, with identity access management being unfortunately open because you just reuse components there, you rely on the components there. And there's lots of things that's getting updates on all of these different components and the patch management. And this, of course, deals then with a lower level, right? So this is based on the operating system knowing to deal how we work with the APIs. So is there patches on the different security is also affecting basically the higher level and lower level the same alike at the same time, because we talk about wrapping here. And then when we come to the higher level even, then you would say software as a service. Okay, also there you have, of course, lots of ideas of how you deal with applications. For instance, today we see the large language models still are debates of copyright protection. You have all these interesting SaaS applications which are now leveraging the large language models, but still the question here and there is open, who belongs really or owns really this large language models, because all the copyrighted material here and there that has been used to train them, it's not at all clear. So inherently in the application, you have still questions about the cloud security, right, which has to be tackled. And then the whole notion of data loss, of course, becomes now also data breaks, data leakages. If you know something about, for instance, the Garmin case was just basically in the media not so long from now, and I don't want to talk much about it, but that means, of course, big companies, the Garmin watches you all know, These are a constant threat that people will attack them, will hack them, want to have ransom. They have to protect the data very well in the cloud. It's personalized data even now. Although Garmin maybe just tracks health data, still you can consider the next level of health is then quickly medical, where medical information is maybe shared, and you don't want to expose it necessarily in the cloud. So here we see again, different measures really on different levels are needed to really cope with all the problems we see there, alongside all of these cloud service models. And they are basically in close interaction with all of them on all the different levels, right? So if your infrastructure is very badly secured, then the software as a service, no matter how well you do it in these components, you're still basically maybe being hacked on the file system level in the infrastructure and still get access to much information you don't want. So to really, let's say, have this trust in the cloud, this is something where different kind of measures are really needed, where basically lots of energy has to be going in. Otherwise, you basically go to the hyperscalers or to people that are really doing that and have the public clouds, as we would say, and they at least have thought about many of these layers of problems and have good protection measures in place. But there are other elements which shake a bit the cloud security. People say trust in it. So in the end, this means several different perspectives again. For instance, the national boundaries could play a role, and the data login. So one of the things we already discussed a little bit was this software portability, right? So basically having an improved interoperability among cloud platforms would be nice, but the APIs are still extremely proprietary, right? You have S3, for instance, a de facto standard, you would say, in AWS. But the other storages and other clouds maybe have completely different interfaces. Also, it gets to a de facto standard. We didn't say it's a standard, so AWS can change it as they want. And this is, of course, a general problem of the software portability. So your data is locked in some software on the SaaS level, which is one of the problems. Quickly enabling us basically to think about what happens with software portability, if a cloud provider goes down, right? So basically I have to enter all the information you have to get all the information somehow out if I know it in advance. So there are lots of challenges that if software portability is not there, you pay a lot of price in terms of maybe human labor to get the information still to an accurate position. And the data login is something which is then the next topic really. It was, we say, of course, the providers usually don't have really a big interest of getting the data extremely quickly out, let's say in a standardized interface with one click and then I go from Soho to Salesforce tomorrow. And this means we can maybe lose all the data because maybe some SaaS company will go down in some respect, and you have a hard time to extract it under a very, let's say, easy way. And then the other one is, of course, if you want to have to move to really a kind of more attractive service offer, maybe you can consider maybe in 10 years from now, CRM solutions will be maybe open source and we tackle other things in company business. Then it's still a problem to get all your 10 years out of a CRM maybe and to put it in the open source solution. So these are big, let's say, not really cloud security inherently, but at least trust concerns, which are really often also put under the cloud security topic. And the lack of standardization is really a big theme in this. So we need much more governance on all of that. So more regulation, perhaps, to have standardized APIs that says, if you put contact data, for instance, in one of the SaaS provider, you have a one click of a comma separated file that takes all information out of this customer and then put us to a file that I can then immediately load up in the other provider. So while that is true for maybe some, and of course some of the contact information, the providers will always say, well, it's very difficult to have our own schemes, our own AI models based on this customer dropped to disk and then reload by others because it's very distinct. Of course, that's their way of being a company, right? I mean, that's the company secrets in a way, even to deal with this information, seeing the CRM information and their inherent sailing strategy. There's one more big thing that is known in the past as the Patriot Act, but then Safe Harbor. Lots of debates of where you think also your data is safe, that not any law enforcement can look at the data, for instance, right? So it's dealing with the protection of your data in terms of privacy. And there are certain rules in the European Economic Area and the EU. And of course, it addresses these concerns, and where also the GDPR is quite strong in. But then if you go to SaaS providers, you always have to take care and think about, well, where is the SaaS provider really, right? It looks maybe like a German provider. Everything is in a German language, or everything is an Icelandic language. But then it could be hosted somewhere in the US. And then there are certain US Patriot Acts and US law enforcement strategies and really regulations that enable to look into the data. Right, so hence we not at all think in the moment that perhaps storing your data always outside the EU is very smart. Many of the, let's say, infrastructure providers have talked long about a so-called EU sovereign cloud, which means storing really information in the EU is protected thereby by the EU and so on and so on. Hence the law and trust, let's say, in the storage has become more and more concern. And even in this course, I can share that some student was even thinking when I talked about the add tool, right? That we have an add tool, which is a kind of chat tool here we use alongside the course really to get, around the assignments and to have student interactions more, a chat tool if you want, based on threads and so on, forum for messaging, you can call it. Anyway, the point is that this is hosted partly in the US, but there are also European providers hosting it here. And there was a discussion once. So you see, it's a topic where some people really think about. And I think it's important to think about. And also, if you think about, you have company secrets, which may be revealed outside of the EU and then just, quickly put to market because there's a bigger market or there's bigger entrepreneurship if you want to make a solution easier into the market to get revenues. This is all a danger also for companies. And I think on the SaaS level, it's good to describe that, because here we're really tackling on markets that are out there, and you can think about the SaaS solution, which we previously really didn't discuss again so enormously, is the worldwide operating entity, right? You can say maybe here and there in China it's blocked like Google and so on, but still with SaaS, you're just in the next country as well, right? So hence the kind of boundary levels will disappear of all the nations. Hence, this is an important topic to think about also. And in some concerns, we have already seen who is suing who there, based on Ireland as a company, but international operating, whatever. And there are different things in the media that I think some of you have seen. It's an important aspect until today, really, and you have to have basically at least an overview in it, or at least consider here and there some lawyers when you are doing this in companies, so that you're on the safe side when you talk about your bosses, because some of your bosses will have to, basically ask this to you, or they have to give their boards of information, basically this, basically the governing board, or they have steering boards in companies, whatever it is, stakeholder boards, and they want to know what happens to our data, where is it stored, can other people access it, what happens if it's a leakage. And this is an important topic, and it becomes more and more as we use, of course, SaaS more and more on a daily basis. But let us go on. Again, some of these things might be much more better integrated in a cloud security course, or at least partly addressed in a cybersecurity curricula of a university. So I just make here the points that this is loaded and also can also have significant impacts of how basically SaaS levels are used by people. Another facet how we use it is something which I can go a little bit quicker over, I think, because many of you know these collaboration features, which are very clear, have, let's say, really sharing, liking, social functionality really integrated in all the software. This is something which also SaaS brings us along with being intermediately, and all the time connected basically to everyone else who maybe is just online in this tool. All of this Web 2.0 live comments that you see, and even you see here ad hoc collaboration that is possible, for instance, again, as an example here in Zoho, everybody who is just online in the Bay label. You see that here you have an integrated messenger within the company then that maybe has Soho for the customer relationship management. And let's say I'm just communicating with a certain customer, and I know that my fellow partner in the company was just at the golf course and has seen this customer on the golf course. So they can basically chat while doing interactions with your customer online, and you can have the, let's say, the oracle of your whole company friends at your disposal in a certain ongoing conversation, maybe with a partner on the phone. So this is another big benefit of the SaaS features. Here is a concrete example of CRM. Now think about solving your assignments. I think many of you doing this also together collaboratively was suggesting here in the course. And of course, you know by now that the instant messaging, chatting, and so on is of course a strong tool as well. Another one which is not so obvious but has been turned into SaaS solutions a long way, not only by entering maybe a Word document together, like we do for proposal writing or whatever it is, and you maybe for the assignments. Think about that this has been now enabled us to really write documents together. You see that here together, and it's even scalable to 10 to 20 users if you use Google, for instance. So that is quite interesting. You can comment on it in real time. Others see the comment immediately. They can respond to comments. It's a complete new work, basically, that we can enable through this, a much more faster work perhaps than in traditional software times. And this brought also sort of the success of basically the SaaS level. Then the whole big problems and challenges in the long run and of having different identities. Some people call it the need for federated identity. Some of you know that already. You can log in with Facebook everywhere. The question is if that is a trusted source. I think that should everybody answer yourself. But the point is, this has been also now on the SaaS level, at least harmonized in some solutions. I mean, here I take the example of our own website from the University of Iceland with respect to all Microsoft Office elements, where you can log in. You can even log in then to Ugla Canvas as well. But you see that you have a world rich for sets of apps you can use through this. And this is all one identity, right? I don't go then for these different applications again and have to re-enter my identity. By now, we have even two-factor authentication, another important factor, I think, in cloud security, which is sometimes not easy to basically do in practice, because if you have a certain moment, you want to have some urgent meeting thing, looking something up, and then suddenly this two-factor comes in and your phone is in the game again, and it takes time from you. It still is a way, of course, to make the SaaS options much more safer, right? In this sense, this was contributing to the success perhaps in the last couple of years, where more and more serious hacks going on, where of course this solution is also bringing us much more security than perhaps in the last 10 years. And this is a good example, and it gives you then again, of course, all these ideas of immediately sharing with you, as you see here, a proposal that I wrote with my fellow Professor Matthias Burg, where we comment on it, we work on it, we can share it, and many of you know this information as well, combined, of course, with many facets that you can enter different product parts. We could here enter, of course, a quick Excel table showing perhaps also how much budget we need for the project, etc., etc. Sorry that this is a German example, it just comes from me. But of course, think about that, all of that would be not possible so easily if you would have not SaaS. There are early interactions between people, and many of you know that already, early interactions in the terms of gaming. The first games come along perhaps 15 years ago, so where people can play together over the internet, have one, let's say, game tackled together. There were many of them, I think X-Wing in the Star Wars arena, but also Diablo in terms of games going through different dark corridors and so on. But these are all the initial elements, and then over time really got more broader here in the SaaS element, where we now have a world where I think many people are online, so we can say it's almost like an infrastructure now, the online business, and this really grew to the success of SaaS. And then much more notably that you have even ad hoc communication inside the SaaS applications. And obviously I can go on and go on with examples, and I think many of you know them. The SaaS workspace solutions, they are now basically in all the bigger clouds anyway. You have seen Microsoft, of course, just now. Google Docs is similar. I mean, many of you know that, and I think many of you even probably will use a Gmail from Google. Many of you share Google folders with assignments probably, and basically work together hopefully on this and learn a lot together. Here the point is really that this has penetrated our life everywhere. And many people are working on it, not only in industry, also in science, engineering. We actually use these tools quite a lot. Although it's often initially free, always take away the message that at some point in time the company wants to get money. For instance, if you have replication schemes, automatically maybe putting your whole desktop up into OneDrive, then you quickly enter the regime maybe of a terabyte or so, where you suddenly need to also pay a little bit. And then over time, of course, that's where you then also have this cross-selling ideas. Maybe you want to have family sharing, enabling 4 terabytes with all your MP3 collection or even other elements that you have, because MP3s are probably not anymore on vogue. You have much more Spotify and all of that, but still you have many things to share, and then you buy the next family edition with 4 terabytes and so on and so on. So there are different ways how these companies make money today, and I think Google is also an interesting example. And I want to give Google also in another light than in this examples of making revenues with the app business. Although we continue with this a little bit in lecture 15, but of course, what Google also managed quite nicely is the Google Ads revenue channel, right? Where in previous lectures, I spent much more time on it. And that's where you also have to pay a lot of money, right? When you want to be positioned, like you see here, Café Taur, Cafe Downtown. So they pay ads to Google to be seen by you as the first place when you search for coffee. So this is a business which is, of course, very nice. It has basically benefits for many people that don't know about it, maybe easily love that they have an ad on it. On the other hand, it gives Google quite some revenues on this. And on the other hand, of course, we see it more or less today as an almost de facto standard, going downtown and checking then also the reviews maybe of these different places. So it has enabled, again, not only this ads revenue channel, but also a way of using information which was previously not really possible, of combining information of many different kinds, which is of course something today which almost probably everybody uses. And if it's not Google, the people would use maybe OpenStreetMaps for localization. But then you immediately get the deal that you don't have the revenues anymore, the reviews anymore of all these different locations maybe. So there's a certain added feature, of course, to this, that we want this as customers, and we look at these views, and with the views, of course, the ads are seen and giving a nice, let's say, revenue channel back to Google. And then you can nicely steer this. I mean, in previous lectures, I was even saying how you do this. You can have certain ages, you can have certain, areas within basically certain countries. You can have a certain type of population. There's all sorts of filter criteria that see the ad in the end. Another point I wanted to make is the niche markets, right? So think about that electronic shops like we would have here. Bico, Elco always goes together, right? So they have also their, like electronics here and there. And then, of course, you would think a lawyer that wants to have, let's say, specialized product services, for this would go always there for contracts and would search a specific software. So good luck, right? For niche markets in Iceland. I don't know how much there would be, lawyers here. There are many I were interacting with, but of course, those that are maybe then also focused on contract management, and they just happen to be downtown, wants to see, is there a new standard software for exactly my niche market of contract management as a lawyer? So this is, of course, in sort of an absurd example, right? So of course not. So the point is also here, the SaaS has enabled niche markets to be visible. Of course, you'll be now visible with your product along many of these lawyers in many different countries, enabling a much bigger market, which is very important if you are in a niche market. I mean, the good news is you don't have many other players, hopefully, right? You're in a niche market because the name suggests that only a few have providing their basically, good solutions, like we see here with Conga. which is a SaaS service, really more or less for contract management, contract creation, negotiation with different clients in secure environments, and so on. Lots of automatism on the way, but really oriented much rather to all lawyers. And already what you see here, let AI power you in transformation. You see also the AI topic already has, of course, penetrated this software stack as well. But here, the specific case I wanted to say to you that, of course, in the SaaS idea, delivering the software over the internet, easy usable, that's now the point, right? Lawyers are not experts that you would consider to work on an infrastructure as a service level to provide SSH access and then look into documents, or go to the platform level and say, well, what of these different elements I need to do contract management? No idea. So I probably need some storage somewhere, and somehow I need compute something. But so you get the point. The solution is, of course, a very nice one, perhaps, and in the niche market, which is for a highly educated section of our, let's say, population that is doing this particular job in this particular niche market. And the SaaS is just beautiful for this, enabling this market like just 15 years ago with different elements, how you basically market and get the software out there. Then other examples quickly, we have already talked about specific clouds existing. Here's Alta Engineering, where you have a very specific cloud for people that doing computational fluid dynamics, computer-aided engineering, those that do car crashes. They also team up with some of the hyperscalers. You see here the AWS SaaS factory program, which then is a very specific area for SaaS applications. Do this, and then, of course, leverage automatically the platform and the infrastructure as a service from Amazon to really work very specifically with engineers and with your customers for very specific purposes. So here we're leaving the space of Google Docs and things, which are more for the general population, I would say, to very specific solutions. Again, a niche market if you want, but it shows also that, of course, many have the needs for computer-aided engineering, and having there a partner program that Amazon does here, for instance, is, of course, enabling then other bigger companies like Alta Engineering, which are quite good in this computer-aided engineering design and solutions, to really provide a cloud-based access together by focusing on their strengths, like the aided engineering here, and for Amazon, of course, clearly the powerful infrastructure below. And computer-aided engineering quickly relates to HPC topics. You see the hint here. We do this also with computational fluid dynamics in the HPC course, because this could be really computing intensive to compute car crashes, car designs, and so on. But I'll leave it here and refer you to the HPC course. Another engineering niche market was recently transformed from UberCloud to SimAir. I did this already as a sneak preview somewhere. Here you can see it's also aligned to our ideas of how using containers, right, in the UberCloud or now the SimAir cloud. And where these ANSYS that you just have seen there, these elements of you basically creating maybe computational fluid dynamic solutions for maybe aircraft, whatever it is, can be nicely containerized and then be used in a specific cloud platform. And you see also here with the UberCloud, as I said, this is in the transition process. You have to see the press release, but it doesn't matter for the container-based solution. You see here also that these containers are supported even in Advania data center. So very Icelandic way of seeing what is supported and so on. And they're all working on Kubernetes and Docker and things we will explore now in lecture 12, coming up very quickly now in the course to give you also more information on this. So you can go on and go on. We will find very different niche markets of relevance. The final one I want to leave you on the table is, of course, now a more scientific academic approach. It's called the European Open Science Cloud. However, there's still partners from the commercial industry basically on board. You see here the Open Telecom Cloud, for instance, Telecom as being much more partner in industry and so on, and different solutions I want to talk about B2Stage, B2Safe, because they capture nicely the essence of different service providers for big data again. So what you do when you have this specific needs to transfer data, replicate data and so on, but you want to not do it necessarily with the hyperscalers, right? We have a EOS Nordic project in Iceland as well, so we're part of this. The project is, let's say, directly finished, but the Open Science Cloud carries on. And it is really an initiative that also wants to do data, fair, meaning findable, accessible, interpretable, and reusable. So this is something which is really, let's say, driven by the European Commission to make us all a better society, learning from each other, and then also offer selection of tools that we want to discuss. One is here, as an example, the hub services for researchers, where I talk a little bit about the data management examples, because those can be dealing now with big data, another facet of the course, if you remember, in the EOSC. One is the B2Find discovery service, which is then really the idea of, based on metadata, finding different repositories of data that is already somewhere existing. Hence, the key there is really metadata, describing your data sets that you have somewhere in some clouds. In order to find them, they have a specific harvester protocol to go through the data, let's say external community of metadata stores, and to just give me information where is what data. Then in the next, you would have the added value of B2Share, where really the idea is you want to share something like a Dropbox element, and you want to share a little bit like research data that you have done from your last run in the cloud, an analysis, your regression task with some other people, or you want to publish it a little bit alongside your paper. You would say it should get a persistent identifier then, that you see a little bit here. You upload your data, get a persistent identifier, and then you can really use it quite in many, let's say, metadata databases and papers and repositories, so that once you have uploaded this data, this B2Share service enables you then to reference it, to download it, connect with APIs to it, and so on. So this is meaning, you basically publish your data in a way, but it gets a DOI and it basically with auto information and metadata alongside it. Also very important, this may be rather small scale research data, not the big data. If you really want to have big data shared and saved or transferred, there's a B2Save service, which is really a service to do, data management policies that we have seen almost like with the Hadoop distributed file system, thinking about replicas, for instance. There's, one community repository, and some specific elements out of it would be basically stored in a data center somewhere, and then you agree on highly valuable data set spreads, that there's a certain replication schemes with other data centers. In other words, this data so easily cannot get lost anymore because you do a replication with many different other data centers. There's another sort of type of data that you need regularly to implement really data management policies. And this could be really on large quantities of data. But you can imagine replicate all the data that you always have in all the different scientific communities always 3 times might be quite an expensive endeavor. Hence, you would maybe with some rules or policy management would also define what of the data sets you really think is the one we need to replicate a lot. Hence, it's also, of course, a cost idea here, but here is not really directly the credit card swipe transfer, but rather collaboration that we had initially in the UDA data infrastructure, and that is not now also going further within the EOSC services, and also with some, let's say, service providers like CSC in Finland that take quite an effort also of sustaining these resources and types of services. Then another one that is really important is the B2Stage. Important in a sense for us because it has opportunities really to have interfaces and the functionality as a software as a service to really use a service as a transfer from data repositories to HPC or cloud resources, right? So here we think about, again, how to really transfer large quantities of data. You don't really want to upload everything in a Jupyter notebook directly with one click when it's terabytes. So you need other schemes to first transfer it to the cloud and then activate the notebook. And then it's already hopefully stored in the public cloud or so. Hence, quite a lot of, let's say, different software as a service modules really that you need. And I hope I showed you a little bit the complementarity of those, that basically you need them. They also come alongside with more open regulation, with open ideas, with FAIR, as I was told you. So really sharing data. And you can see now that European projects, for instance, are quite forced these days to make things open, to to open science, to support the FAIR initiatives where possible. That doesn't mean always revealing company secrets, but at least here and there, the reproducibility of services, of reproducibility of data analysis, machine learning models. This is all something which plays into it. Here's just an example of the EOS Nordic project that also basically Iceland was part of. And this initiative is, let's say, going ahead. So finally, before we close, just reflections, because also as a honest broker in the university, I have to always give you a little bit also of disadvantages of the approach. Of course, think about that we now need to be online all the time, right? You go to an airplane already to US, 9 hours or so, then you know what I'm talking about. So you need suddenly a lot of things which are online, which you actually have to pay quite significantly now. You always have to have, then an in-flight module for getting good bandwidth. And then also you can consider, of course, sometimes it's even not there. It's not just provided or the system is down. So you're 9 hours off and cannot work properly anymore. So it's certainly a disadvantage of SAAS. There's some opportunities to download it and then, you can upload it after the flight, for instance, but with 9 hours, chances are your colleagues already have, for instance, improved your proposal, have already worked further on the certain task at hand. And then service as a software substitute is a sort of critical thing where in a way you now completely subscribe with a black box character to some solution. Right? You don't have any executable as in the past anymore that you basically know it's executed on your computer. You have, certain elements around it that well, the executable is not communicating maybe to somewhere and taking all my data I'm putting in and storing it also somewhere else. You don't know, right? So you can see it even as a principal violation of free software, this black box that you don't know really what's going on. You don't know what the protocols are in the back. And this is also sort of critic to the SAAS. Of course, it's often used, but what's happening behind the scene, we really don't know really for sure. And then the need for SAAS data escrow, I think that goes without saying what I said before. Lots of issues are with the data. So data is locked in. What's happened when a SAAS service goes down? Who owns the data? Some company that maybe somewhere, somehow is acquiring the SAAS solution is getting suddenly all the data, and you don't know if you really, are happy with this. And there's lots of these different elements, as we also said, what happens when law enforcement comes in other, let's say, countries and suddenly, take copies of the data, and so on and so on. So especially this, I think, vendor bankruptcy is one thing. And of course, what happens, can you really sue someone if they, let's say, lose the data or if their data gets getting hacked, right? And then being in the open in the internet. So what can you do with that in this role? I mean, once the data is out there, it's done, right? And you cannot be blamed for it because you trusted the SAAS system on your own computer. You would have installed firewalls, whatever, to hopefully make that not happening. But there you are basically in the boat with those that doing the SAAS security. And you sometimes don't know what they do in terms of security. And I think the rules and legislation about this is still something that needs to be improved a lot. We have seen GDPR now. I think that's at least in Europe, quite something to work on, including, for instance, also the right to be forgotten. So you can contact these SaaS providers and says, I was once a customer. I want that my data gets completely wiped out, no trace of me anymore. It makes them kind of headache. So you have to delete lots of things, but it's a rule and a right they have to apply to, right? And this is software which in other, let's say, geographical regions in the world, that is not at all understood, as one clear example. But I think that's all in the moment I want to talk about SaaS today, especially also about the European Open Science Cloud. The topic is much bigger, as you can understand. SaaS is much bigger, but I think I gave you a good overview on the different certain topics which are of relevance here, including cloud security and awareness of your data being remote. And I think I stop here. Please play the video if you want to understand more about the EOS services, and we will continue then on Thursday. See you then.